had directed the Minister of Finance to officially engage with the IMF following President's meeting or phone call with the Managing Director of the IMF. Dr. Tuna, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Bernard.
Yeah. Is
Good
it
morning to your viewer.
So it's Touna-Mama.
Listener, I should say.
Yes. Is it Touna-Mama as one name or just Tuna or Mama?
It has to be Touna-Mama.
Touna-Mama, I see. So you've been very busy, so thank you for coming because I know it's been a very busy day for you. I think it was 2 Fridays ago that the Information Minister of Ghana announced that the president had asked the finance minister to engage the IMF. So what did that mean for you being the guy running their activities here in Ghana?
First and foremost, Bernard, let me make a couple of points to start and acknowledge that these are really difficult times, not only in Ghana but around the world. In Ghana, we've seen with the latest release of the inflation numbers yesterday, around 29.8, that for the layman, I should say, cost of living and living standards have been affected even more. So I have a lot of sympathy for, all the requests legitimate because of loss of real income by labor.
Mm-hmm.
We know that inflation is a tax to the poor.
Yeah.
So we really sympathize with that, and this is something that we have in mind. The second point that I want to make, and I've been amazed since the announcement of this request by the number of people, civil society organization, think tanks that have really worked really hard to explain to the public. I mean, they're making my life or my job easier, right?
Okay.
Because from Bright Simons to yourself to Professor Bokpin to George Waffe, really a lot of people have tried to explain what that means, and I think that it's good that independent people try do this work. For me as a res rep, when this call comes, of course, it's not completely unanticipated. We worked really hard to have a system of what I would call early warning, where we track various indicators. We track the political economy, and we remain most of the time ready to the extent possible, and given the data that are available, to know when that time may come. So for me as a res rep, of course, the first thing is to be in touch with my headquarters after confirming that the authorities, in fact, have made that request. Try to alert my team, try to alert various players inside the institution that Ghana has requested an arrangement, just to get the ball rolling so that everybody is on high alert. For us specifically as a team, and given the urgency, the question really was how soon can we get there? First, to convey to Ghana the importance that the International Monetary Fund has for the country, but also to assess, how deep is the hole, how difficult is the situation, and really get started. This is exactly what we've done. The official announcement was made on July 1st. Our first team members were in Accra on 5th of July, right? So really rapidly, if I can say.
So what you're saying is that based on the work you do, you should not be surprised when a country reaches out if you are doing your work well, because you would have been monitoring the situation independently. So if the request to you had come and you're like, whoa, how did that happen? That means you failed. So essentially, you are saying you are not surprised. You knew that it was within the horizons of possibility, or it was quite likely, even though I'm premising this because even though in the local discussion, the Minister of Finance and other officials had made it quite clear that they were not interested in a program at this time.
I think that even before the announcement was made, you know, calls to come to the fund were widespread.
Yeah.
Not by us, because for us, I think that the authorities are, sovereign in making that decision. But various segments, various stakeholders were of the view that this was a viable option given the mounting problems. Um, we of course have more precise data, and we we thought that this would be a possibility, right? Despite of course the direction that the authorities signaled that they wanted to take, namely not to come to the fund. We still needed to be ready. Of course, we cannot know um, exactly the timing and whether
Mm.
the alternative would work or would not work, but we need to be ready. I think this is
Yeah.
really in that sense that
Mm. You have to be
you know,
ready.
yeah.
Now, I'm asking this because when you read your Article 4 summary, your visit, and then the July last year report, the tone seemed relatively positive. Let me read some highlights. While this is an executive summary, while noting that the risk to Ghana's capacity to repay have increased, directors concur that they are still manageable and that Ghana's capacity to repay the fund remains adequate. Directors welcome the fiscal adjustment envisaged in 2021 budget. They stress that fiscal consolidation is needed to address debt sustainability and rollover risks as Ghana continues to be classified as a high debt stressed country. To protect the most vulnerable, considerations should be given to more progressive revenue measures and a faster return to pre-pandemic levels of spending. Directors agree that the monetary policy stance remain broadly appropriate, while noting that tighter policy would be needed if inflation pressures materialize. So my point is that the Article 4 consultation and the summary did not did not spell doom. It almost said things are hard, but the things you are doing are okay. That was July last year. So how come between July 2021 and July 2022, all of a sudden, we've had to reach out and say, guys, we need you to come and help us solve our problems? What went wrong?
I mean, the assessment is made on a forward-looking base, and you know we take into consideration
Mm,
um, the plans and policies that the authorities want to put in place to address whatever vulnerability
mm-hmm,
is there. So that's the first thing.
mm-hmm,
The second thing is that um, I think the world has changed quite drastically since July last year. Um,
mm-hmm,
I can name a few things that have happened
mm-hmm,
both globally and locally. I think that um, while last year, there was still a debate globally on, whether the amount of fiscal stimulus push by bigger economies, the U.S. Specifically, will generate inflation.
mm-hmm,
It has become now clear that inflation is a fact, and it's very likely that this will remain with us for a long time, and that has a lot of implications uh, for a country like Ghana that until now had if I can say, a business model to raise financing globally, because
mm,
when inflation increases that much, the Federal Reserves in the U.S. really need to tighten strongly,
mm-hmm.
therefore make U.S. assets more attractive and attract capital outside of
Outflow.
emerging countries,
Mm-hmm,
right? And that makes
mm-hmm,
borrowing for a country like Ghana, even without any other shock, it makes borrowing very expensive. But locally, a lot has also changed. Um, we've seen, uh, we've seen. I mean, after July, of course, the budget for this year was announced
mm-hmm,
in November,
mm-hmm,
and I must say that budget um, was really scrutinized in giving the direction of whether Ghana will be able to address those vulnerabilities. And I think that that was an important marker. If you recall, uh, the day the budget was announced or the next day, we've seen Ghana's Eurobond spread widen. I mean, to put it more in simple words, investors started requesting a higher premium in order to lend to Ghana. By de facto, this was a signal that the direction that they are seeing in the budget was not, unfortunately, convincing for them. And from there, we've seen, credit ratings downgrade.
Mm.
We've seen a lot of uncertainty around the passage of the e-levy. So
Mm.
I think that we can agree that a lot of things have happened that have made,
So the
the moment.
assessment
Yeah.
as of July 2021, while it was true, by November, December, and certainly by March of the next year, things had deteriorated pretty badly.
So I think that if you read carefully our report, I mean, we've had that conversation before at I think one of your shows.
Mm.
Um, of course, we always accused of you know casting our final assessment in a way that is very balanced. But I think that people that have the habit of reading our reports know what what to look for. You know
You mean we
that
can break the code of your diplomatic speak?
I mean, it's not just a diplomatic speech, right? I mean, Ghana is an emerging market country, one that is, um, depends quite integrated with financial markets, right? So you need to have. It's actually, you know, you are responsible if you have communication that account for this fact. You don't want to have an alarmist communication and trigger a massive capital outflow, right? So, um, but at the
Mm.
same time, you still need
Mm.
to
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 put,
to
because
convey.
an example, if for
Yes.
example, let me read something. You said directors noted that the financial sector cleanup had made the sector more resilient, but stressed that banks' growing holding of sovereign debt creates risks and crowd out private sector. Basically, you're saying the government is borrowing too much from these banks. So even though the 2017-2018 financial sector cleanup is good, when you look at the loan book of these banks, they are too exposed to the government. So if something were to happen and the government cannot pay, the banking sector will be threatened. This is what I would say in English. But you have said banks' growing holding of sovereign debt creates risks and crowd out private sector credit. I mean, somebody say, what does that even mean? Why
Yeah.
do you
I mean,
why is it that you've said it's because you don't want to send out an alarmist mind in communication so that maybe the markets may overreact? But is there not a sense in which that may not make the point more vigorously to a government?
I mean,
Or do you understand?
let me say that there's always an aide memoire that we leave with the top policymakers. I mean, the report that is published is let's face it, is a light version and more crafted version in terms of how to communicate. Um, but the report that we leave with, with the top policymakers is very candid, very direct, and you know, some may say sometimes perhaps too alarmist, but I think that um, we will not do our job appropriately if we don't flag the risks to
Mm,
you know the ultimate decision makers when it comes to the management of the economy.
okay,
Let me put it this way.
good. So let's just go back. We've announced an IMF program. We've done this at least, some people 17, some say 16 times. Why do we have to go through all the meetings and all the, like, we are in dire stress? We say, IMF, come and sort us out. You've been based here for years. So why don't you just come and say, Ghana, you need $3 billion. Here is $3 billion. Sort yourself out. Pay when you're ready. Why does it have to have a mission? Come, go, come, go, come. January, before you even think about whether you're even going to give us any money at all.
I think it's a good question, and one that we get I guess quite often. First thing first, it's important to find out what's exactly the nature of the problem that has led to a request for a program. Um, we lend typically to support, you know, I mean, I'll say the balance of payment, but I think what's important is what trigger the balance of payment need, right? Um, Therefore, we need to, as part of our due diligence, find out really to the details what is generating that, right? I mean, you can have a situation that is really transitory, created just by a massive shock, and for a reason um, that is perhaps beyond the control of the country. Uh, some financing are just not materializing without having, uh, let's say, a domestic problem that is obvious. And you can think of a natural disaster. You can think of let's say even the pandemic, right? I mean, you've seen that during the pandemic, we've deployed a specific type of instrument called the rapid credit facility. You know, um, disbursement on the spot, a lump sum disbursement for a need that has emerged because of a shock of this nature. So that's one type
You want to what you're saying is that you want to be sure that the way the government sees its problem is the way the fund sees the problem. That's what you mean by you want to establish the nature of the cause. So you want to be sure that what went wrong from the two sides. You agree that this is what went wrong.
uh yes, I mean, let me get to that. I mean, I start by taking the case of the rapid credit facility, right? And um there it was an actual shock, an urgent need, and it took us basically around 4 weeks to complete the operation, right? Because it was clear there was really um, no need to do any more due diligence, because we've been battling that with some other member countries since December 2019. So we knew the nature of the shock. So it was clear to us that a rapid disbursement was what what
What was required?
what was required.
Mm.
But you can also have balance of payment needs, coming from uh, what I'll call more structural issues, right? And I think that's the case we are in Ghana. And for these cases, the expectation is that um, a rapid disbursement will not solve the problem, right? You really need to go into those structural issues uh, in order to solve that need, and be sure that after a couple of years, um, the country is back to some sort of an equilibrium. And I mean, it sounds easy in practice, but I mean, it sounds easy, but what we need to do in this case is really to have a lot of experts looking at, you know, spending controls, PFM, domestic revenue mobilization, really in down to the details, in order to have a set of levers that can be tracked during the program and can be put as targets for the government to achieve, right? And it takes a lot of work. So that's just the aspect of not only the assessment but also designing the program itself. But there is also the aspect of the policies of the fund. Um, we need to land consistent with a set of internal policies that the fund has. And I think one that has been quite discussed here in the media is, for example, that we cannot land into an unsustainable situation, right? So therefore, there are a lot of discussions around, how to. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the world we are in. We've not made that determination yet, but this is a policy, right? This is a policy, and therefore we need to, in our discussions, find ways to be able to lend to the country.
Like
So that's one type of lending as well, and we need to do our due diligence to get to that
if
point.
I get you right, whatever you do has to agree with your internal policy as IMF. And one of your policies is that you cannot lend to a country which has an unsustainable debt. So you have to establish whether the debt we have is sustainable. Again, break it down. If you say a debt is sustainable, what does it mean? Or if a debt is unsustainable, what does it mean in English?
Um, if we say that is sustainable, it means that it can be serviced without having to take measures that are detrimental both to your social environment and your growth environment. For example, if you need to cut all government programs in order to service your debt and therefore, you know, have undue pressures on your social spending, uh, therefore, just to service the debt, right? Therefore, perhaps your debt is not sustainable. It's not at the level that you can sustain it. To put it simply, right? So, you know, the opposite is, of course, if it's unsustainable. If it's sustainable, you should be able to run your government without much stress while still servicing your
But if
debt
my
and while still
no,
strangling
if my
growth.
debt were sustainable, I wouldn't come to you. I mean, I'm being very simplistic here. As in, if if what you just said is true in terms of sustainability in that simple sense, then why would a country come to IMF? Is it or is that sustainability a technical term of art and it's not just English language? Because from the way I see it, if I'm in a sustainable debt position, there's no reason why I should come to IMF and say, come and sort me out. So I'm coming to you because I am. Do you understand?
Yeah, I do understand that the problems are not just about the debt, right? For a typical economy. I mean, as I mentioned, uh, you know, what we lend for is first and foremost for to sustain the balance of payment. Basically, your balance between what you export. I mean, very simplistically, and what you import, right? So you can have an imbalance there
Mm.
for other reasons than just having a debt that is not sustainable, right? You can be in a situation where um, your imports are too big,
Mm.
either because the banking system is lending too much,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore you are approaching us to help you structure a program such that banks will not lend too much. And
Uh-huh.
as you do that, you still need to cover your balance of payment. Therefore, you need the funding that we bring. So this is a situation where it has nothing to do with the 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 government itself, but more with the financial system, but still requires the IMF to come and bridge that gap in your balance of payment and
Mm.
design structural reforms such that the banking system will have a more appropriate
Yeah.
level of lending.
So, but if I understand you correctly, it means that it is not automatic that we will get any money from you until you do a debt sustainability analysis and conclude that our debt is sustainable. We may not get any money from you.
Um, Typically, when that is established, right?
Mm-hmm.
We still do our we still continue to design a program, right?
Okay.
We design the program and we get to an agreement, but we also uh, indicate to the government in question that they need to find a way to make it sustainable. It's not that we just stop the work and we say, look, we've established that that is unsustainable, and therefore,
Wow.
but it takes that's why it takes a while, right, to get to a program. I mean, for situations where the balance of payment need
Mm.
is coming from structural issues, um, it takes a few months
Mm.
to reach a deal. And of course, if there's an issue also with that being unsustainable, we also need to wait for the government in question to find a way to make it sustainable. This is the case for Zambia right now, right? We've agreed at the staff level of what the program will look like, how much money will give, what are the targets that they will have to achieve over 3 years. But the Zambian authorities are working with their creditors to make the debt sustainable, right? To get some debt relief, to restructure the debt in such a way that perhaps they or reprofile the debt,
Yeah.
the debt, and once we've made the assessment that this is enough for the debt going forward to be sustainable, we transfer the file to our executive board, and we can reach
Wow.
board approval.
This is City Breakfast Show 8:45. Guest Dr. Albert Touna-Mama. He's the resident rep for the IMF. The mission just left. I think they left last night. This is the first visit of probably 4 or 5. We don't know, to provide balance of payment support for Ghana, trying to just establish the basis around which they work. We've learned a few things today. Essentially, that the conditions in Ghana have deteriorated pretty badly between 2021 July and now. Some external, some domestic, and also the two sides must agree on the nature of the problem to determine the design of the program. And also, we've established that it is not automatic that once the IMF comes in, you're going to get any money, because your debts have to be in a sustainable way. Just a side question: could this be why Sri Lanka has gone where it went? Because I thought with all the problems we were facing, they would have approached, and possibly did approach, the IMF. And I don't know whether it's because it's taking time, or whether you people don't think they're in a position to pay. I'm not sure if they're on an IMF program as we speak. Are they? Would you
No,
know?
they are not on an IMF program. They've probably waited too long to approach us. Yes, it's a case where that is not sustainable and where they need to work with their creditors. But it's also a case where they've waited so long that they've run out of dollars to pay for critical goods like fuel imports and medicines, and because of that, that has had some major social repercussion,
Mm.
right? People went on the street, and eventually the government had, I mean, a few key members had to resign until we saw a couple of days ago. The president also is under pressure to resign. So therefore, you have on top of the debt being unsustainable, you also have a problem of who are your counterparts? Can you actually negotiate an agreement that will be that will have people to execute it, right? In the case of Sri Lanka, I think that half of the ministers have had to resign, so there's no. Perhaps they will need to have a new parliament in place. So you need to have the necessary condition in order to execute the program, right? So
Well, but that's
that's
interesting, because some of us would have thought that being a member of the IMF and being perceived as a lender of last resort, if a country is in such dire fiscal straits, this is where the IMF would probably come up with an emergency relief package to prevent them from imploding. But you're basically not doing that. So I'm not sure if it's because I have a wrong perception of the IMF, or whether it's because their contribution is so small that they are not entitled to so much. So based on where they are, you can't give them anything.
you've seen during the pandemic that this is exactly what we've done, right? I think for a lot of countries, the only source of financing that they receive in 2020 was from, you know, either the rapid credit facility or the rapid financing instrument, basically emergency financing because of the conditions. Um, in the case of Sri Lanka, it's pretty clear that the the needs are structural in nature, right? And that's the first thing. So injecting $1 billion, I mean, I don't even know what's the size of access that they have, will not solve the problem, because it's just going to be burned, for a couple of months, and there will need to be another injection, right?
Mm.
But I think this is it's like I think I made that point before. We are almost like a credit union for countries. This is revolving money, right? We need to be able to lend in such a way that the money is paid back,
Mm.
because when there is another crisis, it'll be important that other members can find money in the pot, right? These are not
It's
grants.
true, but people accuse the IMF of being selective. For example, when Greece had a major problem a few years back, the the fund bent over backwards to give them much more money than they would typically give a non-European country. A lot of people felt it was because Greece, being a member of the EU, the Eurozone, they didn't want to risk contagion. So they gave Greece much more money than its fiscals would typically entitle them. But Sri Lanka or whichever country, you are not in Europe, so you are not. So basically, that's the accusation, that you are very selective in how you support, how you choose to support countries based on how close they are to Europe and America.
I mean, I would not say that. That's, I don't think that first is it's not the same situation. And in the case of Sri Lanka, um, uh, I think behind closed doors, we've been signaling for the longest time that, look, at this pace, uh, you will need to address the situation a bit faster.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that's not the direction that was taken, and therefore, the country was put in a corner, and to a point where it was no longer possible to just disperse the money when they needed it, right? But I think we are, I believe, on record to you know indicate to the policymakers that the pace at which things are going is really not right. We should better work on this right now. So that's the first thing. I think in the case of Greece, I don't recall the details of their engagement, but you were something that is quite important when you go you make a program request, and that I think at the time was taken into consideration by the fund, is the potential for spillover beyond just the country. And I think the discussions around the program that we had with Greece had far-reaching implication for the European Union and for the world, because if we take it as a block, uh, this is one of as a block, right? One of the biggest economy
But that's the
in the
point
world.
I'm making. That
But
Greece is the third largest
but
borrower from the IMF.
what you
Yet,
are saying,
when I'm
no,
just saying that the fund doesn't treat. It's not fair. You choose how to support countries based on the the I won't use the word whim, but basically based on how the power brokers in the fund feel about countries.
I think in both countries we were willing to lend, right? I
Okay.
think the question is not whether or not we want to lend to Sri Lanka. We
Mm-hmm.
want to lend to Sri Lanka, but we've passed a point where certain policies have to kick in,
Mm-hmm.
right? In Greece, we also were willing to lend, but they had to take very drastic measures, to get it. It's not like this was a free program where
Mm.
you just take the money and we run. Because if I follow you correctly,
Mm.
you think that this is what should be happening with Sri Lanka. What we're saying is it's important to have a package in place, just like we had a package of reforms in. I don't think that the Greek saw that program as one that was favoring them, right? So, as you may
No, no,
say,
I'm
this
not
is
saying
unfair.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
that I'm not saying you should give
So
Sri Lanka the same money you gave Greece. I'm just saying that the level of Greece's debt to you, they are the third at the time, apart from Ukraine and Argentina. Greece owed IMF the most money. They were in dire economic straits, but
it's
they were
it's
able
a
to get
it's a bigger economy. It's a bigger economy. So we land in proportion of the size
I
of the
see.
country. I mean, we won't give if Sri Lanka's economy has I don't know $100 billion size. We won't lend the same amount as we did in Greece. I think, which was what, 50
So
billion.
that means Sri Lanka's need is even smaller. Even this, if Sri Lanka is a smaller economy. Anyway, I'm not pushing. This is really what people have said, but no problem. Let's come back to Ghana's situation. So the view is that this may take time. We've had a first meeting. Do you give yourself the next date? So, for example, the team left yesterday, which is July 13. do we already know when they are coming back, or that depends on what happens?
Um, the answer is no. We don't know yet. Um, we had really constructive meetings, really good cooperation with the staff at both the Ministry of Finance and the central bank.
Okay.
We made important progress in really understanding the economic situation, and also starting to talk about what needs to happen between now and the time when an IMF program is agreed, but also what could be just broadly the elements of that IMF program in terms of what needs to change in the structure of the Ghanaian economy. Of course, this was informed by the enhanced domestic program that the Minister of Finance is working on. But I see a lot of expectations that these negotiations need to happen fast. But let me just bring you back to the last program with Ghana, the extended credit facility that was signed in 2015. We received the call or the request for a program, I think, in early August 2014. And it's only in April 2015 that the program was agreed by our board, right? So it gives you, it gives you a sense of how much work need to go into this. So that's 7 to 8 months, more or less.
7 to 8 months.
7 to 8 months more.
Wow.
So I think that's it gives you just what I'm trying to say is that we don't expect that we'll get a deal next month, right? There's still some work to do. And what is agreed on is, of course, to continue to work. My colleagues went back to Washington, but in the coming weeks, we'll still be having some virtual discussions. In a couple of weeks, there will be teams, experts coming here to work on, public financial management, look at the tax policy, an overview of the tax policy, in various other sectors of the economy. We also have additional data, of course, that we need to gather and to analyze. So it takes time.
I see.
But I think that the next milestone for us, without putting a date, right, is once we have a sense that we have a good enough grasp of the situation and also the policies that need to be put in place, we put together the first what we call the policy note. It's like our mandate within the institution of what we should be doing to address the situation. So as a team, we put together this document, and we have what we call a policy consultation meeting internally, where department or experts within the institution challenge us or challenge our assumptions and the policy that we've agreed or we think could work, I should say, based on their experience in other member countries. And we have 190 members. We've been doing that for quite some time. So it's important that whatever we recommend is really
But just to
tested.
go back quickly, something. Maxwell Akalari of the Daily Graphics yesterday wrote a story, which I just want to comment. So his story basically says that the talks came to an end with debt and arrears accumulation emerging as the most contentious issues. Is he correct?
No, unfortunately not. I don't think that there was anything contentious. We know that debt is an important part of will be an important part of this program. But I would not say anything was contentious. I think that
so you disagree with the word contentious, but I think his point was that the two. So maybe let me rephrase. The two most important sets of data that need to be properly reconciled will be debt and arrears.
I mean, rightfully so. No, I think that the challenge when you run an economy like Ghana, you of course have central government, right? And I think for central government, we have I think a close to, let's say, very accurate view of what are the liabilities. But I think that when you go outside of central government, and even sometimes within central government, when you go into, MDAs, there may be other liabilities or arrears or unpaid bills that we need to work on. I will not say that this is contentious. This is just a work that has to be done, right? So this is part of the process. I don't think that I have to say this was a very smooth mission, right? We work extremely hard on both sides, and both sides. I mean, the authorities or the technical staff very very forthcoming. So there was really no such thing as this was not disclosed and so forth. I think we have a I would say good view at 90% of potentially the liabilities that are out there, right? But we still need to be sure that we've been.
Is the IMF does the IMF not have any emotional issues with the finance minister's posture before? Because in the news, we've heard him many times that he said we wouldn't go for an IMF program and he didn't think it was good for us. So when the team met, he was there.
We
What can you share?
We don't work with emotions. I think that we are highly trained professionals. We understand the politics. I think that, I mean, that's why I'm here. And I think throughout this episode, you've not heard anything, any pronouncement from us, right? So we understood exactly what was happening.
You didn't take it personal.
It's never
It's
personal.
never personal.
It's never personal.
But is there a way in which the domestic politics makes the work harder?
I think when you take such a decision, right, after, when you take such a U-turn, I believe that you need to work really hard internally to bring back or to bring along your government, or people that have followed you in this pronouncement that, look, we not go to the IMF. So you need really to do a lot of explanation and explaining, I should say. So I have no doubt about that. But I think something that was really reassuring when we met the finance committee, right?
That was yesterday.
That was
Tuesday.
No, that was Tuesday. Tuesday at I think 4 p.m. The members of parliament for the NPP gave us the assurance that now that they've made that decision, they are fully on board and they will give their best for it to be a success. So to me, that was
what did the NDC members say?
I mean, of course they will they understand, and I think that was also quite good to see. They understand the nature of the problem, right? So they will want it to be solved, and if they believe that a program is the best way to do it, of course they'll support it. And I think they in that meeting mentioned again the statement by the former president that it was in support of a program. So we know, right, given the context we are in, this bipartisan support is crucial if we were to have a successful way forward. So that's all that's important.
So the meeting in parliament was positive, although the emphasis from the NDC MPs was obviously different from the NDC MPs. The emphasis in terms of, because they've said that they think that the government mismanaged the COVID expenditure, for example, and I'm sure they pointed that out to you in the meeting, that they would ask you to scrutinize that.
We have our due diligence. We have a tested approach to these issues. We won't diverge from that, but I think we are fairly confident that we will eventually reach a deal that is first helpful in terms of restoring macroeconomic stability that has been lost, but also anchoring that sustainability, right? So that's what's
A
critical.
few other things. In the lead up to this meeting, organized labor has been agitating quite seriously. As we know, 4 teacher unions are on strike. Senior staff of Ghana's universities have joined the strike. Doctors and nurses have threatened to do same. The Ministry of Employment and Ministry of Finance is meeting organized labor to try and avert a total grinding to a halt of the public sector. What I mean, it obviously complicates the mission's
It
work, does it?
does,
Does
it
it not?
does, it does. And I start by kind of empathizing with all the social aspect that is legitimate, right? Uh, I think that there is it's critical to have you know a process to build consensus around a program to be successful. Uh, I may recall that in the last program, um, even before the request, there was kind of a wide consultation. I think the century consensus, with various parts of the economy, I think labor, um, civil society, to agree on what was important, but also
Mm-hmm.
I guess to indicate and acknowledge that the situation was difficult.
Mm,
Uh, you know, so it's important that for this program request as well, and
mm-hmm.
that will really be a strong call,
Mm-hmm.
that there is a way to have you know broad consultations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we also flagged that in our press release yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's important as a country to decide what are the priorities, what are the
Mm,
sacrifices that need to happen, what kind of accountability,
mm,
right, also need to be in place. um, we really see that as critical
mm,
to be able to deliver and turn around the situation. So
mm.
that will be a positive way forward.
But are you concerned at how organized labor doesn't seem to generally trust the IMF, which is why almost all the labor groups, in fact, the TUC said they didn't want us to go on an IMF program. They still don't think it's a good idea. And it seems as if the announcement, of course, the inflation and everything was high, but it seems as if the announcement of the IMF meeting program has almost as if it's whipped the labor unions into action, into to say we need you to give us our cola now, because we think that after these guys come in, there's no way you're going to increase anything for us.
I think a 30% inflation is a high enough incentive to be more forceful in you know
Mm,
requesting for an improvement in the cost of living allowance. I don't necessarily put that. You know, I'm not too sure that was the trigger, right?
you don't think so?
We've seen late last year, right? We've seen already some was it I think the teachers, right, last
Yeah,
year they had to stop
that was
their
UTAG.
strike. That
UTAG
was
went on
UTAG,
strike.
yes.
Yes.
So that was even before we were, there was any talk of a program. So
Yeah.
I don't necessarily see a correlation here. Yes, of course, I've heard you know several mentions of the fact that typically under an a program with the IMF, I should say, um, you have wage freeze and so forth. But we agree on an envelope. We don't, we don't necessarily put conditions on the wage bill, and within an envelope,
But we know what that
there will be
means.
some. Let me finish on this point. There will be some sacrifice, but I think
Yeah.
something that we make a point of achieving
Mm,
is to safeguard social spending, right? We need to carve a space for programs like LEAP, for programs that are effective in protecting the most vulnerable. I think that's non-negotiable. And during
yeah.
this mission, we start doing our homework on that front.
Uh
Talking
huh.
to UNICEF, talking to the World Bank, talking to development partners that are very active in that field,
Yeah.
just to gather additional knowledge. But this is something that going forward
Mm,
during our discussion will be
yeah.
we'll make sure that
Yeah.
we carve
But
that space.
certainly, one contentious point is social spending
Yes.
programs, and the government has been at pains to say that they would not cancel free SHS, which is a large expenditure item. Again, they've been forced to say that a bit louder before your meeting because there's a view that some of the expenditures
But they're not.
I'm not going to do this. I'm just asking. Like so some people feel that these, because we know the IMF policy basket, we know that it's either an EFF or an ECF, and you have a long history of what you prescribe. So it's not as if you are going to create a new solution that much. So my point is that when things like free SHS, the ministers come out and preemptively say free SHS will not be touched. Again, how does that affect? Because you're now trying to ascertain the problem, and yet the government is being forced to tell citizens that free SHS is not going to go. This is not going to go.
No, two things. The first, it's important to say that free SHS is a revolutionary policy, right? So why cancel it? So it to me, I don't even it's not even clear why that conversation. It doesn't mean that it's perfectly sustainable and efficient now. So that's a different conversation. But as for the policy, I really don't see why it needs to be cancelled. I mean, secondary education, as we know, and we've seen for a lot of studies, is correlated with a better economic development path, right? So to me, there's no debate on whether the policy, needs to stay. The debate is more on, how do we make it sustainable and how do we make sure that we achieve efficiency gains there. And I think, as in any negotiation, it's I would say it's good to go with really an open mind about these things. So we've just getting started, right? I think that in terms of taking a second look at where are the leakages, are we achieving the impact that we want, we really need to allow ourselves to think through everything and decide, okay, where do we draw the line? And the line will not be on canceling the free SHS. That
just a final point. I know you've stayed for a long time, and thank you so much for your time. A group did a debt sustainability analysis of Ghana for the past 20 years, and I think the main point there is that since 2007, Ghana has started taking on more expensive debt, and they're talking about going to the capital markets, the international bond market. We've borrowed almost $13 billion from that type of borrowing. I mean, 20 years ago, most of our debts were from Paris Club, much more responsible lending. I mean, and I'm asking as a general question, does the IMF not worry about the nature of debt countries like Ghana take on, whether it's sustainable for them? Because at the end of the day, if you are borrowing from countries on a bilateral level, or you are borrowing from international multilateral lenders, it's not that bad. But if you go to the bond market, you don't know who's even behind the money, and you're having to pay close to double-digit rates. I mean, isn't the IMF as an institution concerned about these forays into the bond market generally?
I mean, first, I guess the first thing is why some countries are tapping the bond market. I don't think it's a bad thing per se, because the availability of funds from bilateral sources is not what it used to be, right? And as you grow and you reach a middle income level, those sources of funding may not be there, right? So therefore, in my view, the question is more on how much, right? How much do you need to borrow from these alternative sources, and what is the use of fund that you make with the money that you raise from the Eurobond market, right? So it's more a question of how much debt or commercial debt is good, and what's the use of funds in order to repay that, right? So, but these markets are there for a reason, and given the infrastructure, given the infrastructure needs of our countries and developmental need, you cannot possibly think that our countries, I mean, when I say our countries in Africa, can develop just on the basis of bilateral.
But don't we need more things like the Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank to be stronger, because they seem to do more responsible lending than simply. And these questions I'm asking are not even related to Ghana necessarily, because you work with the IMF and you're a senior economist there. So my concern with the IMF is that you don't seem to see anything wrong with these forays by resource-intensive countries into these bond markets, which essentially have destroyed countries.
If this, I mean,
I mean,
I will
Argentina.
not be, I will not be so categorical. I think it's the quantum, right? It's how much debt you take, right? So, but I agree with you that strengthening the African Development Bank would be great. And I think there's some work there. I'm not sure. I think you covered their
Yeah, yeah.
annual meetings,
I
and
was, yeah, we're there.
yeah. So there were a lot of conversations around how to increase their firepower, and hopefully this I hope this will be successful, because I agree that short of raising bilateral financing, uh, raising financing from
Mm.
regional banks like AFTB is the next best thing, right? Or it's the first best thing, I should say.
Mm.
But again, you know, I don't want to portray the Eurobond market as this heavy. I mean, you have countries like, let's say, Senegal or Benin, right, uh, that have really good credit ratings. They issue an Eurobond once every, I don't know, 2 3 years, and it's not a problem for them, right? So again, what's the use of funds that are raised, that are, if you raise a bond at 4% or 5% interest rate, like Senegal, are you creating a return that is big enough? That's the real question. I mean, for Ghana, it was obviously a bit higher, but there is also a way to improve your the interest rate that you pay, right? So, and this is done through how much um, uh, fiscally good I mean, how good are your public finance, right? I think
Mm.
that you have a strong correlation between
Mm.
how much debt, how much deficit
I
you
see.
have, with how big is the
I see.
interest rate that you pay.
Before you go, some people are wondering how close we are to Sri Lanka in Ghana's situation, based on what you've seen about the our numbers. Are
No,
we?
I think it's a dangerous parallel to make. I think you know we I think it was the right decision to and a very brave decision. Let me say it right. To reverse course and come to the fund.
Mm.
We are really committed to make it work,
Mm.
and I don't want to draw any parallel with a situation that is very very
So
painful
we came at
for.
the right time, and you don't think it will get there?
That's not the expectation, not at all,
I
not
see.
at all, right? I think we
I think that's
yeah,
heartwarming. I think people
okay.
needed to hear that maybe the fact that it was a difficult decision but was taken on a timely basis means that maybe much more evil can be averted. So that's a good thing. Hopefully,
But
when
but
the
there are a lot of things that need to happen between now and the
mm,
deal. And I saw yesterday another really good article by Bright
yeah,
Simons, and uh, before the first money actually, we bring the first dollar. There are a lot of things
that
that,
have
yeah,
to happen.
yeah, I
It's a
think
lot
it's
of
it's
hard work.
important to
Thank you.
remember
You're
that.
a busy man, so to even allow 1 hour here, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Dr. Albertuna Mama. I'm not even sure he has 1 hour to spend teaching his kids homework, but so thank you for answering all our questions on the show. We wish you well, and hopefully, if there's any new information you want to put across, we'll be happy to receive it.